Hello, everyone. My name is Matt. I'm from Canada, as well, yeah, you mentioned, which means that I'm going to have an accent because we have an accent both in English and both in French, as you just saw this morning. I'm a product manager. I've been leveraging EDGY in the last year in my own organization, and I've been doing a workshop facilitation for quite a number of years because meetings that you can actually construct things, I absolutely love that. But what is peculiar about my case is that I really leverage EDGY in 3 different postures, so to speak. And I'm a fan of cinema and gaming, by the way, if you didn't realize it already. This is a bit like the good, the bad, and the ugly. So I'm going to tell you about the 3 mindsets, so to speak, that I have through EDGY during the course of the last year. So before the game starts, Achtung, very important, there's going to be a lot of gaming references. And that's because I was mostly working with programmers and designers that were in the field of leveraging gaming technologies for business applications. That's what we did at SmartPixel, the company I was with. It's also important to mention this is the first conference that I'm actually standing alone right in front of a crowd. So yeah, just that. And also special thanks to my friends. Thank you. Special thanks to my friends Jean-Sébastien and Eric from N Friends, because they are the ones who introduced me to EDGY, and I wouldn't be standing here if it wasn't for them. Thank you, guys. It's not just a brand; they really are. So, first thing first, spoiler alert, this is not a success story. This is actually something that I wish I knew a year before, because I leveraged EDGY in the middle of the mandate I was hired for. And I wish I had learned it from the very beginning, because I think, as you're going to mention, as you're going to see it, that it would have changed a lot, and I mean a lot of things. One of the famous quotes I like, because I'm a golfer, the very famous golfer before Jack Nicklaus and Tiger Woods were actually professional golfers. This was the most famous one. He was an amateur. He said, "I never learned anything from a match I won." I really like that quote. So instead of presenting myself through a resume, I thought it would be fun to just present myself with key EDGY moments through my life. So here it is. The first moment is when I was about 12 years old. Everybody was playing a very revered and celebrated and popular game called Zelda: Ocarina of Time. Yeah, gaming reference. I love it. And everybody was talking about that game. Everybody was playing it. But me, when I said to my mom, "Mom, come and see this, come and see this," I was actually letting her know about the architecture of the menus in the game and the capability that you could actually manage through the game. And you should have seen my mom say, "But aren't you going to show me your game?" In retrospect, I should have known that I was a bit peculiar mind on that front. The second moment is much more later. I actually did an MBA in finance. I come from a business background. So that means that I was with a lot of architect minds that were all into very precise, very powerful, very systemic systems. And we had one course, which was management information system, where everybody was taking all these different, very specialized software. And there was me who did it on smartphones. And yeah, smartphones looked like this before the iPhones, because it was actually about a product that was leveraging, ironically, a lot of those different programs like Bloomberg and Reuters, but in a much more simplified way. And I was really interested about the product itself, because I knew from that moment that it would change the world by the simplicity that it's giving us, that it would give a lot of accessibility. Another key moment, I obviously did a lot of things in finance, but at one point I really wanted to bring back idea management instead of portfolio management. That's why I gained some capabilities in web, to not just manage it, but also understand it. And I learned about programming, modeling, design, etc. Also learned about marketing, which by the way, my marketing teacher is in the room, that's EDGY. What is really separating me from the crowd, again, is not necessarily the capabilities. I was terrible, for example, in 3D modeling, because it was so complex for me, it was so technical. But where I really shined was bringing a sense of identity, a sense of storytelling to my projects. And that's when I should have known that I would become product manager, because that's all we do. We tell stories to different stakeholders so that we can understand each other. Another key moment for me was actually the first product owner role that I had, because the company where I was, it was the most renowned branding agency in the Ottawa, which is Canada's capital city. And they really wanted to move Agile. So they wanted to have the Agile process, the Agile methodology. They wanted to bring the clients from Chicago to Ottawa so that people can actually learn about all the process. And it was a very, very serious thing, because it was a very, very big project, the biggest to date for this agency, which was the total rebrand of a New York Stock Exchange company, the website, the brand, everything. And I never did project management, and they still hired me. And that's probably because while everybody was focused on process, a bit like in this room, when we receive all the stakeholders, it was a U-shaped table where everybody was having all their thoughts. And I put the chair in the middle with user on it and say, if somebody wants to speak in user voice, just go to the chair instead of cutting people awkwardly. And we can say that you can be the user voice. So it was all about understanding the experience and the user perspective, as much as you can see here, building a minimum lovable product, not just a minimum viable product. And what was really interesting about this case is that the client really understood what I meant, and instead of focusing on the process, because this was mostly managed by us, they were really in the mindset of minimum lovable product. I actually created a monster with this thing because they were always telling me about it, but it actually ended up in a very successful project because we had the right mindset, not just the right methodology. And then what brings us to today, the project that I was on as a product manager was really to bring a product from a concept to a public, so to speak, level by really doing some prototypes, validating ideas, making sure that we have a good product market fit, making sure that we are scaling the business. But obviously this is very technical again, and it is only in the matter of the business language. And that's why I'm really glad to be here today, because I've started applying all these principles, but from an EDGY perspective, which is a multi-dimensional, multifaceted perspective. So these are my 5 moments. We don't have really time to talk, especially since I have a plane to catch right after. So in those 5 key moments, you know me a little bit better already. About SmartPixel and what we were doing, the roots of SmartPixel was really about touchscreen experiences, which is, I have a little example for you. This is SmartPixel's website. We actually, I don't know if you are familiar with the movie Minority Report, where they move things around to discover a project from every angle. Well, this is exactly what we do, and we do it on a global scale. And we've become very good at this because the roots of SmartPixels is pushing the limits of the industry. We're actually the first to leverage what we call the Unity Gaming Engine, which is the engine to build video games, except that we used it not to build video games, but business applications. This was like 10 years ago. The present was obviously we had worldwide recognition, and we were really moving into a cloud-based offering because it was easier to manage for us, to scale, but also for our clients and even for our users. And we also did a brand sprint for the future because the goal was really, from a storytelling perspective, only us, it was like a black box, only us could use all these things. And we wanted to spread our expertise globally so that we don't have to grow from a 50-person company to a 500-people company and manage all that complexity. No, we wanted to build a network, and we wanted to basically create a Minecraft of the business. So that people, even if they don't have any technical skills, they can build themselves those 3D applications. And the very long-term vision of this was to become what we call the Google Earth 2.0, because Google Earth can tell you about the present, but we wanted to create something that could tell you about the different futures that you can see and that everybody can gather from different perspectives. I know it's a bit crazy, but that was the vision of the company. So this is a video game-based presentation. So there's 3 levels. The first level is about wisdom. And I really like this quote because the path to wisdom is paved with humility and openness to new ideas. And that's exactly what I did with EDGY, except just like we said this morning, I did it in a very stealth way. Why did I do this? Because if I can give you some context in one image, this was what it looked like 1 year ago. And it's going to be very emotional to say this, but exactly 1 year ago, one of our colleagues, very likable colleagues, we had a lot of fun with him. We actually committed suicide. And this was September 21st, or September 20, I guess there's no coincidence. But it really spanned a lot of conflicts that were hidden, and then the open conflicts happened. The director of our department who was managing all the developers, programmers, was really, I could say, he was really fighting, so to speak, with the CEO. And the high management wanted to be more tactical, raise money, and my team wanted to have a strategic orientation so that we can actually know what the owners want to build. And I was like this, a bit like Bart, not like this, but like this. I was stuck in the middle because being product manager also means being chief translating officer. That means that you listen to everybody's conflicts and priorities, but you're stuck in the middle. Okay, I'm not going to complain about that. It's the reality of the job. So what I did is there was a big meeting. We were supposed to have strategic conversation. It didn't happen. And a lot of people in my team were really not in a good mood. Some even threatened to leave the company. So there was that big meeting that was organized by the CEO, who was the speaker. That's why there's a little mic here. The CTO was there, the CFO, the whole product team was there. There was some people from the service because they were supposed to be our first client, our beta testers. And obviously some people from sales. So big meeting. The thing is, I'm talking about wisdom. You know, normally you want to solve the problems and get into the situation. I decided no. Jean-Sébastien introduced me to EDGY about 2 months before this meeting. And I said, you know what? I'm going to shut my mouth. I'm not going to even talk about EDGY. I'm just going to map out all the concerns, all the questions, and all the different perspectives of all these people in the room. And obviously, I'm not going to go into much detail because this is not the point of the conversation. But as you can see, if balance is everything, this is not very balanced, because just in terms of branding, people were asking about the logo and the naming. That's it, the purpose, the story, all of these things. We were very dev-focused at SmartPixel, so to speak. And well, the consequence is that we were having a lot of conversation about the product, the features, the different technical aspects. We were having a lot of conversation about what we do with the gaming engine, the technical specification, etc. We had some conversation about what kind of legal structure we're going to apply, the employee stock ownership program, so that people can actually feel empowered into this company. But in terms of architecture, very good. In terms of experience, mostly talking about channel, website, the fact that people need to have 3D modeling training, which is just a small part of the equation when you're going to see it a bit later, and how to sell projects. Because at the end of the day, our clients were real estate developers and promoters, and what they need to do in their world is sell with projects, with our 3D applications. So, I mean, in this part, it was okay, but really where there was a big flag. That's why I love emojis, by the way, there's emojis all over the place. That's why there's a big red flag on the identity perspective, because at the end of that meeting, when I was having all my post-its and all the questions of people, I was like, okay, we have a problem here. We are extremely unbalanced. So what do we do from there? Which brings us to level 2 of my game. This mindset is about courage. And I really like this quote from Marcus Aurelius. Courage is not shown in the display of rage. It would have been easy at that time, trust me, to just yell at each other, but in the ability to confront our challenges with grace and composure. And there is two ways of doing this. So this time the video game, to give you a bit of context, was I had two choices. Either I gather perspective and I let people fight it out at the very beginning so that we can actually talk later, or I let the whole thing play out, and this is just a time bomb. So without being dramatic, I took one of the biggest risks of my career. I really shook things up, where I was about a year at this company, and obviously I've traveled to meet a lot of investors, stakeholders, clients, users in a lot of different countries. And that's why I'm going to switch a little bit to the other slide. The workshop, I'm not going to go into much detail, but the workshop I did, we always talk about the importance of language. The one thing I did at the very beginning, you can't see clearly here, but these are all quotes from the different stakeholders from Quebec province, from the US, from Latin America, from Asian Pacific market, and even some from Europe, because I've been in all these places to gather insights about the market in the last year. So I started the meeting with this, and then I moved with a much more complex, as you can see, but EDGY-like material where there's a bit of post-it, as you can see, but what really is important here is that I really challenge how we perceive ourselves, our identity, to what we want to build and what our stakeholders or users or the people interacting with our product and our company want to. Because for us, SmartPixel, we're PC gamers, which means we're all about performance, we're all about very nice graphics, very performing machines, not necessarily about accessibility. While the product team, what we wanted to build was a very plug and play product so that people don't necessarily have to manage the complexity that we're used to. So I took the example of the Nintendo Switch, that it is still a console pretty powerful, but you can just plug it in, plug it out, and it works. And you can actually carry it with you, because in these times of days, people are very mobile. It's very important for them not to just have a big machine, a big PC with a big power. They are able to transport it with web players to them, because web is the future of everything. So I challenge them also on the fact that our clients, on the other end, the clients, the stakeholders, what they're used to, they're in marketing, they're in sales, and what they're used to is an iPad. So as you can see, we have a big mismatch here. So I confronted the whole company on, what do we want to do? Do we want to stay on our course and assume that we are big performing PC gamers and miss the bulk of what our client actually needs to be working to manage capabilities, and also for our team to be able to manage it very as a product, because PC is very, very custom, while this here is very templated. So for us, for our capabilities, it changes everything. Custom coding versus actually making some product that can be scalable is two totally different things. And our clients also, they want another thing from this. So it was a big fight, but at the end of the day, what I learned is that we needed to have that fight. Why? Because the C-level didn't want it. They didn't want us to have this conversation. And when we were in the room and we were having this big workshop with EDGY sort of facets, what stood out is one of the people from my team said, no, we need to have this conversation even if we don't want to have them, because if we don't do it now, we're going to be blocked later. We can't just do like this, which brings us back to the importance of courage. It was a very harsh meeting, I won't lie, but a lot of good insights came out of this, so much that it actually got very smooth, starting from EDGY to actually what you see here in orange and in yellow are actually the priorities that we identified during that big meeting. And then we got to, okay, what do we need to define value? And then what you see here, obviously these are just posted, but it's really what we do first, what we do later, what we can do in the long run. But this all happened in a very organic fashion. Even so that the director of development, he started another meeting with our own team, the product team, and he was workshopping like I was doing for the first time, and it went super smooth. So not only EDGY was helpful for me, but it was also inspiring for the people of my team, which was very nice. So, yeah, so this is really the level 2 where I was the facilitator. The level 1, I was much more the detective, the stealth guy who was just making things without listening to things. And this, I really confronted people by being the facilitator and say, talk to each other. We need to have this conversation now. And then the third level of the game, obviously we were trying to launch a product, and we had a worldwide launch plan in the biggest real estate conventions in the world called MIPIM in Cannes, France, if you are aware of it. And even if obviously it wasn't perfect in terms of alignment with all the stakeholders and the internal team, we had to do that launch. So we put everything in our power, and we tried to focus on that. At least I tried to focus on that. But what I mean by power is the power of a common language. When I got introduced to EDGY, I really started thinking about the different way that people were talking to each other and how they didn't really understand each other. And I was like, instead of being the translator, why don't I build a dictionary, a translating dictionary, so that everybody can understand each other? And that's exactly what I kind of did, because the product team, the service team, the sales team, they were pretty much disconnected in terms of language. And here you can see this is a new game for me. It was really building bridges between the different languages. By the way, if you think that platforms in 2D or websites or all the things in 2D are complex, try talking about in 3 dimensions. It gets a level of complexity that when people can get really, even if they work with each other, it is so long to understand each other, especially since pandemic. Those 3D people, they were all in the office, but after pandemic, everybody was at their home. This was all geeks. So the importance of a common language was even more critical. So that's exactly what we did. The level 2 was about building tools. In identity, we wanted to conquer the world, we wanted to spread our knowledge, our expertise I was mentioning. We wanted to build a toolbox so that our clients feel really in control of their own tools, and they don't have all the time to listen to us. And for us, we were building the tools so that they are empowered. That's what we were doing. So my job as product manager was taking care of the launch itself, the storytelling, everything related to the relationship with the partners, the clients, the owners. I did a brand sprint with them. The clients and the partners, we looked at how they were doing 3D modeling. We also leveraged a client, a real project from a real client, so that we can have a demo at the launch, not just talk about the project, but show it. So this was much more interesting. Their website, obviously, everything related to the app installation. But all of this was really interesting, obviously, but where there was a big issue is in terms of capabilities. SmartPixel has been struggling because of increased competition on the service side, the custom application I was telling you about. And they had to lay off some people right after the launch of the product. The fact is, when we actually launched the product, when I was in Cannes, it was an absolute success. We even made sales on the spot at our booths. And people were taking my baby, so I call it, in their hands and not saying, oh, this is interesting. They were telling me, congratulations. This is super interesting. This is going to be helpful for me, for somebody else in the company. It was cross-industry, across many countries, and sometimes 2 different departments in the same organization. So, but the fact is, even if you have a good launch, even if your brand is clear, Even if you have a lot of things in your product that are talking to your users, even if the C-level had taken care of surrounding themselves with a good legal structure, good roles and responsibility, the big problem was this. Why? Because while they were laying off some people on the service side, they said, yeah, but if we hire people for sales, and by the way, we already had the budget approved for increasing sales and then increasing fundraising. If we actually hire some people for sales, how is that going to look like on the service side? We are not sure we are ready to do this. It's going to make us look bad in service that we're laying up people and what we are hiring on the product side. That was the same thing for 3D because they say, yeah, but our service side is paid by the hour and we need our 3D people to the 3D work that it's paid. Although we could have really used some 3D capabilities inside, that would have made us go the level further to show that level of quality that we could have done with the product. Not just the level of quality that this client wanted at launch. And obviously for support, everybody was saying, no, you do the support, you do support, we don't have any budget. You know how it goes. This is what happened. And it's very unfortunate because I was speaking about common language. The one thing that I worked on was building, the dictionary I was telling you about. I'm not going to go long on this, but I think it's interesting to talk about it because the resolution is not so great. But basically, it's how to create a 3D scene. So where you actually have the buildings and everything that you can interact with, as you can see here, how to create a project in a platform, how to manage versions. And when I talk about having a common language and an easy language, it's also having a visual language. So we really did, very small and very key naming that we actually work together as an internal team so that everybody is on the same page for all these technical aspects. And we really did a wiki that was celebrated by our clients, our stakeholders, because they said, we've never seen something so easy to use. We can actually focus on our project. We don't have to understand the complexity of what you do. Thank you. You actually simplified it for us. And it's not just our clients, because what I wanted to do, instead of having, a Google slide there, a website there, I actually wanted to have everything in there, including the story, for example, for our stakeholders. So, for example, an investor would say, yeah, but you're spending a lot of money. What are you doing with all this money? Well, we can tell them that at MIPIM in 2022, the big real estate convention that I was telling you about, we were actually showcasing the MVP, so to speak, the concept, and then they can see the whole story. Then also all the people that are actually using the product, they could see the release notes, which are all the novelties in the product, and even some videos so that they can see, actually, this is the project that I was telling you about, the client project. So this is it in live action. So normally, you would send a big PDF to people so that they can try to understand how to use your thing. By using EDGY, we really simplify not only our process, but also our content. Because these type of little videos are really helpful for our clients to really understand what are the features they're actually buying. And nobody really took the time to take a look at this. The irony is, one of the biggest complaints from service side is, your applications are amazing. We love them. But every time we were showcasing them something, they were learning something new that they didn't know existed. So we were building a lot of features that the clients weren't even using because they didn't know that existed, because it was not easy to find, etc. So by leveraging all this wiki of all the features, it was actually much more interesting for our clients to actually learn how to use the product itself. Speaking of language, there are a lot of technical terms in architecture itself. So I took the opportunity of having an architect in our own business, have a chat with her and listen to a webinar she did. And what I did is create a glossary of all the technical terms in architecture, because when we want to have a common language, this can be pretty technical, like for elevation plan. Just the word elevation plan, by the way, can mean like 3 different things for 3 different stakeholders, including our own team. So there is a lot of technical terminology, not only for architecture, but also for everything related to the graphical quality that we want to achieve with this product. There was also, obviously, when you meet with investors or when you meet with potential clients, there is always that famous question: what is your roadmap? Well, not only we created a roadmap that is really easy to scan, but people can actually put information in there, see the videos that I was telling you about. Those are the same videos. So again, all the different stakeholders, all the different people, the ecosystem mapping that we have in the EDGY framework, these were all taken care of by this simple, very simple wiki. Obviously, this is an MVP, but the goal was to really scale this into websites and everything related to it. But all the content and even the storytelling at some point was really in there. So if I go back to the presentation. So yeah, it was a very successful launch, I might say, but the part after the launch was really heartbreaking, because there was, as I was mentioning, a round of layoffs on the service side. We had 1% of the product side that had to be laid off, because if you don't lay off people from product side and just from service, it looks bad, right? Which brings us to courage. And then it just been out of control. Obviously, we were slower to get things done, even if we had high demand, even if we had good product market fit. And what happened is about a week after I got confirmation that I would be doing this conference, I got a call from the CEO saying, look, we really want to keep you as a consultant because you really helped us with a lot of things that were way beyond the product, but we have to let go of the whole product team for economical reasons. So that's where we are today. The product team is still laid off. We don't know for when, but obviously these people are going to go with their life, right? It's not like you can rehire the whole team. It was an incredible team. It was a team of very architecture-driven people who were building things for others to use, not just being contented with what they build. They were actually building a structure so that people can actually live in, which is a good parallel with the actual architects who build real buildings. But at the end of the day, the reality of the situation is that, well, the service, it was about 40 people. And even if they were struggling for a number of years, they weren't really touched, actually. They are still doing some custom service. But the fact is, even if they have a product that is working well, that's good product market fit, we were very fragile. So if you bring us some TNT, like in this little video game analogy, I mean, at one point, the tower there, it's probably solid, but this one, I mean, come on. And we were barely starting our own adventure. And unfortunately, it is on hold right now. There are even some rumors of acquisition from another company, but I won't go into that. But it could explain a lot of things. Anyway, politics. I'm not going to get into that. So I said earlier to somebody that I would answer the question, did somebody use EDGY in the middle of something? The answer is yes. I used it in the very middle of my mandate of almost 2 years. The first year, it was really starting from the product. And at the end, it was really toward enterprise design. But unfortunately, I wish I would have known all these things about wisdom, courage, and power, that it needs to be balanced. Because at the end of the day, if you don't have courage, there is nothing that guarantees success. It brings really all the other super abilities or the super mindsets. And that's the key lesson, actually. Balance is everything. And just like in Zelda, you need all the three pieces to actually get to the final boss, which for us was going into the market. And it was just, like I say, our adventure started. Well, for us, it was really, I would say, it was my dream. It was really my dream job. I had a dream team. I was in my role. I came from business background and architect mind, but I was passionate about design. I was doing all these things. I was really loving what I did. But at the end of the day, and that's something I told to Milan when I presented my concept to it, I also make a lot of weird connections. I connect the dots of many things. And maybe this is just a game after all, because I don't think it's a coincidence that power for Zelda is in red, wisdom is in blue, and courage is in green. Coincidence? Maybe, maybe not. But in my case, I can tell you, I can relate to this a lot. So the key lesson, pun intended, if you want to go through all the levels of your business adventure, which for me was like a video game, so to speak, and you want to get into that final chamber and go fight the big bucks, which is the market. Sometimes the biggest obstacle is not outside of your organization, it is inside. And if you don't balance all three of these things, you won't even see the boss. Because in Zelda, you need all three pieces to get to the final boss, but that's way too geek of a reference. Sorry about that. So, is it game over? Nobody really knows, to be honest. But I can tell you something. I took it very personally, what happened, especially after everything that happened in that year. I mean, the suicide of a colleague that you appreciate, and then all the things that fell through the cracks because, oh, I forgot to mention, that colleague that committed suicide was also part of the ownership team. And he was the #1 person that the CEO was reporting to because of all the fights that he was having with other people, the director of the law. So when we lost that connection with the ownership, that really went things out of control. So as you can see, emotions are really part of the game. You have to master them and you have to balance them. Would I play this game again? Yes, but definitely not the same way. As my presentation mentioned, the name is from product to enterprise design. If I had to do it all again, other way around. I start from enterprise design and then I move into the product because the biggest learning that I had is what everybody talks about in my work, which is the organization, the product, and the brand. To refer a bit to what you were mentioning, oh, the product and brand is really, really important. Those are consequences of things that are much more human, much more tough, and much more critical, which are know your identity, have the courage to assume it or to change it. Surround yourself with smart people who can actually build stuff that matter, that are sustainable. And be aware of everything that people want to do with their life that's going to be in contact with your product, your brand, and your organization. So I mentioned that the asking me to stay as consultant. That didn't go into a depth here, and I don't know what time is it. I don't know if you guys, 20 minutes, perfect. I want to take this opportunity to say, so far I'm the only guy that is not a consultant making a presentation. This was actually my the company where I was working. But the fact that they offered me to stay as consultant really made me wonder, how can I play this game differently and succeed? And I would like to brainstorm. If it's interesting you, we don't have necessarily to talk about this. I can gather questions from you from the use case itself, but I am launching my own consulting firm, and since I am I try to embody philosophy as much as I can, and a lot of people have told me in jokes that I am a stoic personality. Well, my new brand is Stoics because I want to bring conscience to business strategy so that people can actually have a return on investment that is not just about money, and also have more coherence to enterprise design and bring harmony So to me, this is a KPI, key performance indicator. To me, this is, and that's what I really like about EDGY, by the way. We always talk about key performance indicator, but we rarely talk about key coherence indicator. This is a good use case, I think. But also, obviously, the reason why I thrive into this role of product management, other than I like strategy and building things, is that I love to bring simplicity to people. Obviously, it's called user experience, but you could say human experience, the employees, the investors, the stakeholders. So my goal here has always been to break the chasm. Well, this is really bad resolution, right? My passion has always been to break the shackles between the world of return on investment and user experience, because they don't speak the same language. My mission, I've seen so many vicious circles in my life that I would like to turn them into virtuous circle, pun intended, because for Stoics, virtue is the #1 thing that is important. And as you saw today, democratize the power of wisdom, courage. And yeah, this is really what I want to do. And I am sure, I mean, like we said, like a lot of people said, enterprise design is just a tool in a toolbox. Sometimes, as you can see from other use cases in mind, client or the people you work with don't even have to know that you're using EDGY. But it is really a tool that I think just rewired my brain completely, and I'm going to use as much as I use product management and UX, and as much as I use everything that I learned in my business background, because at the end of the day, coherence and balance is everything. Thank you. Any questions? Or comments, or it can be on the use case or what I'm mentioning to you. I don't know if you passed this phase of being an employee, recognizing that it's not really working, and then you move to consulting, and maybe you can relate to this and tell me what is it that really changed your mind and what brought you to the next level.
So did I understand you correctly that you thought that you have overseen something, so that you have been too much concentrated on some parts of the facets and not on everything? Is that correct?
Exactly. What EDGY really brought for me was being able to map out everything that people were concerned about, our team, everything related to the stakeholders, and really look at all the different interactions between all those elements, and making sure that when it's in our head and we discuss it, it's not really clear how there can be big gaps. And from there, I just move forward with everything for EDGY to bring more coherence to the overall work that we do.
So if you would have had a more holistic approach towards the things, perhaps it would have ended differently.
Absolutely, because the #1 thing that I would have done differently, first of all, is to ask much more questions from the get-go about what is your identity and are you willing to change it? In terms of architecture, are you willing to do something that may not be easy or fun for you to play with, because you're not the one who plays with it. It's the people who actually are looking to your product, and that is very different capabilities in this case. Doing custom things and doing SaaS, software as a service, is very, very different capabilities. And also, are we really understanding the reality, the task that people want to do with their life through our product? And then from these things, you can build on your brand, your organization, and your product, not the other way around. So that would have changed everything if I had started from the beginning with EDGY. Yeah.
You're saying you actually start in the intersection, but you would have rather started in the passive.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was wondering, so you went to this fair, right? And at the fair, they were like, wow, this product is great.
Yeah.
And then everything crumbled down.
I took a plane back to Canada, and the first conversation I had with the CEO after this big success as a launch was that, yeah, we're gonna have to lay off some people. Don't say it. But
Yeah.
at the very first conversation.
So I'm not sure what my question is. Like it's because in the startup world, everything you learn is product. It's to that the product is everything. Yeah. And apparently you made that one, right? So and then all the other stuff while this great product was being built were like silently crumbling down and then so did you see that coming in everyone?
To be honest with you, when we were having the big fights, like that part, I mean, right there, I was like, okay, there's something wrong. I tried to help it with this part where I really just confronted people, but I knew even then that there were some hidden things, and I didn't fully understand it until I unleashed all the powers that we had a big brand, we had big budgets, we had a lot of people that we knew in the market so that they can spread the word around that the product is amazing, etc. But at the end of the day, it didn't work out. Yeah.
I know that you're sorry, but can we say that because the identity, the purpose of SmartPixel was a service company?
Yeah.
Okay. And not product company.
Well, that's the thing. And there's a lot of companies that are struggling with this reality. They are service-based, they are custom-based, and then somebody or themselves say, hey, we want to scale. We want to have global recognition. We want to really be everywhere. We want to democratize everything. But at the end of the day, if you're proud about doing custom things, very performant things, you can't do this on a global scale and be scalable. You have to make some change in your identity, or at least assume that your identity will change somehow. And that is a very big problem for a lot of service companies that are very motivated. I mean, they're motivated, they are competent, and they're driven to move to a product side. But in terms of identity, in terms of emotion, what they want to project, if you don't have balance, again, oops, switch back. You don't have balance, like here, not gonna work.
Beautiful presentation. Thank you so much, and a lot of small nuggets and smiles all along. So congratulations to a beautiful presentation. I was wondering, you were showing in the beginning kind of the investment cycle of the startup-ish or scale-up-ish company, and you also showed that as a translator, you build a dictionary, so customers, if I understood correctly, as well as internal people can understand what's actually going on. Do you know if your executive management use these assets to communicate with the investors? It's just a hunch, but it seems as if there's some financing going wrong, and therefore they were not able to sustain your successful product line.
So not so fun fact, actually. Not only for fundraising, but also for sales. The meeting I was supposed to have on half June was to train all the salespeople to get the word out about the product. And this meeting, I still have a print screen with all the details. And even the sales manager didn't know what was happening, and he was ready. I was communicating with him. Like, we were having the same language, and we were really ready to get things going, not only with investors, but also with clients. Then he learned all of a sudden, just like me, that product was gone.
You get me hooked now. It's a super nice mystery. Curious how the post-mortem turns out.
I don't think it's gonna be the same players. If it's making resumes for this product. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
What's happening?
So I think that like it's a really nice it's a notion on EDGY. I think that it's because it is so accessible. it allows to start the enterprise discussion much earlier. Usually it's delayed, especially in startups. I mean, in startups, you start with the product, you go through the action, and then you realize, oh, if you succeed, if you survive the first 2 years or 3 years, and you end up with 50 people, 100 people, 200 people, and then you said like, okay, let's start organizing the enterprise, and by then it's already too messed up. So I think that like this experiment that you did with introducing these facets, introducing these concepts as early as possible in the game, straight from the beginning, that actually, even if it's not developed, you know, it's somewhere in the mind, it's somewhere in the subconscious of the organization.
Yeah.
And it then kind of creates this foundation of sooner the better, but sometimes the discussion that is needed on how exactly this enterprise is maturing up. So moving from a startup to a grown-up is basically all about like crossing the edge, not the chasm.
Thank you for talking about conscience, by the way, because you were talking about unconscious feelings, and that's what I really liked about Bard's presentation, because he made us work through our emotions deep down so that our rationality comes from some hidden places. And that really tells us a lot about the power of conscience. Okay, I'm plugging myself here, but also about the power of emotion. We are very rational people, we're very organized people, we're very driven people, but you have to factor in the emotion. If people are scared, you have to attack this upfront. That's the big lesson.
If I can just build up a little bit on that, is that I live it because you were talking about they have no vision, they don't know what to do, they're not connected, and I will resume our conversation like that. Stop whining, start mapping. Just do it, map it, and things will.
You don't have t-shirts.
Yeah. Okay, 10% if you do it on a mod.
Please, I think you touched on something and hidden in some of the equations, which is I think a fundamental flaw for design sprint, in that it fails to cater for the viability and feasibility criteria. And so if you don't build that into the sprint, then what tends to happen is you want to scale, you haven't thought about buying, you haven't thought about all the treacle and the soil that needs to be in place for this product to actually work and scale properly. And so to a certain extent, what you're going to do here, bringing the conversation earlier, there are things like the viability and the feasibility criteria that have to move up earlier into that design sprint space. And that methodology doesn't seem to cater for any of the published works, any of that sort of stuff. So there's definitely a missing piece in the design sprint that most people use.
And you know what? You're talking about lean with viability and feasibility. The desirability, we talk a lot about the users, again, which are here. But desire from the user is one thing. Desire from the people who are actually conveying the things in your enterprise has to be taken into account. People can say a lot of things, but deep down, maybe they're not ready, maybe they're just not coherent with what they feel, what they build, and what they give.
And I think that's where the architecture community perhaps failed somewhat, where they haven't equipped the product managers with the right tools to add viability and feasibility to the conversation during the design sprint. You kind of catch it at the end of it. Suddenly you've got to make it work, but you've got to get into those conversations earlier on. You've got to provide a set of tools that will allow you to do that.
Yeah, that's a very valid point. And thank you for sharing your perspective on this.
Did you just use the word visibility?
Desirability. Sorry, that's my French.
Visibility is actually the right word. I want to keep that. So can we claim that? Yeah.
You can discuss it. I'm starting my own firm now.
No, that's the gut feeling. So visibility would be the level of gut feeling that actually comes with the stories you tell.
All the big decisions we do in life, we don't say, oh, it is right. We
Yeah.
say it feels right.
Exactly. Yeah.
There's a reason.
Yeah. So let's keep that word in. Thank you.
Okay, maybe one last question, because we have fresh water. I think everybody's just to have water. Okay, one more question before we have a 2-minute water break. Want to drink water? Okay, so
Feels right.